Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back for another week of Mortgage Boss Talk Tuesday with me, Joy Bailey, the Mortgage Boss. Today, I have a very special guest I'm going to bring up very shortly. But you guys, lately, I have seen so many Facebook posts regarding people that bought a house with their boo or their bae and then ended up breaking up like in the last few months, and they're not really sure what they need to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about what do you do when you are breaking up, when you are uncoupling from your union, whether you are married or unmarried. Because I think a lot of times we always focus on divorced couples, but you don't really know what to do if you're not married. So we're definitely going to unpack that. So as you guys come in, please make sure that you hit the like button because I need it for engagement, because we want to make sure that we're getting this message out to the masses. So when people are purchasing homes and they're, walking around with their hands, clasped together, and they're like, "Oh, honey, I like this wallpaper," that, they'll know what they are getting themselves into. But anyway, you guys, if you've never been here before, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. On my channel, I talk about how to purchase a home. I talk about finance, mainly for first-time home buyers, but anybody that's a home buyer, because even though you may have purchased one home or two homes, does not make you necessarily an expert at the home buying process. So I always want to be a valuable resource. I've been in mortgage lending for 9 years on August the 4th. So 3 more days until my, work anniversary. I don't know, my career anniversary. And before that, I was a middle school teacher. And so the education part is very important to me. I have my accredited mortgage professional designation. And so I try to surround myself with very smart people that are smarter than me. And so, guys, I'm going to bring up for you attorney Christine Hart. She is located here in the Charlotte area. She's an attorney. Not only is she someone that can handle your real estate transaction, if you are a realtor out there and you would like to get connected with her, all of the information to contact her will be below in the description box. But she also is a family law attorney, and she navigates divorces and those type of relationship things. So she'll be able to talk about it a little more intelligently than I will. Y'all know how I do. I laugh at everything. So anyway, without further ado, Christine, please, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I know you probably had a long day, so we're going to make this fun. But if you don't mind, please introduce yourself. Tell us, who you are, what you do, how'd you get to this career choice?
Yes, so good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Hart. I am an attorney here in the Charlotte and surrounding areas. Career choice. Actually, in undergrad, I did a lot of student government, did a lot of legislation, mock trial sort of things. So about my 3rd year of undergrad, I was like, okay, I could get into this, So at that point, I added another major and I started preparing myself for law school.
Okay. So now why do you have multiple, disciplines? Because I thought when people went to law school, they only focused on like one type of law. Like you want to be a criminal attorney or family law. How did you kind of end up being a closing attorney and dealing with family law?
So actually, you have to take all of the disciplines, so to speak. So you're taking contracts classes, you're taking property law classes, you're taking family law classes, because all of these different areas are actually going to be on the bar exam, right? So you may take, additional classes. If you're into IP, you might try and pick up those classes that aren't a part of the, regular curriculum. But yeah, you have to be well versed in pretty much almost every area of law.
Awesome. I love that. No, I mean, like your Instagram is popping too. Y'all, her Instagram had me thinking she was a realtor. She had her hair blowing. Like she got this Beyonce thing going on sometimes. And I
Right.
mean,
I left my fan
her
in
outfits
the
be
night.
outfitting, honey. She is not your ordinary looking realtor. I mean, your ordinary looking attorney, okay? So, do you practice more one side than the other side, or is it about 50-50?
I'll say our actual practice is about 50-50. Me personally, um, I'll say about 30% is family, 30 is real estate, and then the other 30 is estate planning.
Did you find yourself getting in nasty divorce cases? Or I mean, I know, like, I don't know if you know the lead attorney on YouTube, but he has a
Mm-hmm.
massive platform. He has about 300,000
Oh, wow, okay.
subscribers. So shout out to the lead attorney in Atlanta, 20-year divorce attorney. I'm in his YouTube mastermind group. And I mean, he said, he has seen so much and just the
Mhm.
absolute worst of people. He said he dead on the inside. I mean, I'm like, okay. So, I mean, have you kind of shied away maybe because of some of the things that you've experienced with your clients?
I I can say that I have more so as far as I don't know. It's just me and my personality. I already know, like, y'all are just being petty at the end of the day. This has nothing, absolutely 0%
Mhm.
to do with your child and their well being at this point. I do heavily volunteer with the Council for Children's Rights. And this actually gives me the opportunity to not represent the mother or the father, but I'm actually representing the child as their advocate and their volunteer attorney. So I'm like going behind the scenes and I have to actually report to the court my opinion on what's the best interest of the child versus just two attorneys for both parties who pretty much have no, they're arguing about things that have no bearing, true bearing on the child's best interest. So I like that aspect too.
Okay, I totally understand that. And how long have you had your practice? Because you're co-owner, what is it,
Yes,
partner?
co-owner and managing partner of the law office of Montgomery and Hart. We've been in business almost 4 years now. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Doing big things. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So again, thank you so much for stopping by. But okay, we gonna get into it, y'all. Now, so on my thumbnail, I want to be a little messy. Okay. I wanted to be a little messy. So I've noticed that there were quite a few divorces that's happened over the last couple of years. Most recently, we saw that Beyonce's mother is divorcing her husband, Richard Lawson. I saw some things with Bambi and Scrappy, which I know they were married and they're getting divorced. And also Ashley Darby and Michael Darby from the Housewives of Potomac. I kind of selected these strategically, right? So you got Bambi and Scrappy, who were married in Atlanta. And apparently she was complaining because she said that he moved out of their marital home. I don't think that they were purchasing it, but he stopped paying the rent. And so that got me thinking, like, I'm sure that happens a lot. And I'm sure it happens with mortgage. So I thought that was something that, we can definitely touch on. Like, what's the proper protocol when, like, who's leaving? How do you know who's leaving? How is any of that decided? What if one person owns the house and the other person doesn't? That sort of thing. And then with Michael and Ashley Darby, I don't know. Do you watch Housewives of Potomac?
I watched like clips. So
Okay.
I did see that they were getting divorced. And I think but prior, well, she had to stay 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, honey, she got baby. She was married. And she had them two kids. She made sure she secured that bag.
But I
She
missed the
absolutely made sure she secured that bag.
right. I missed the whole thing around, them purchasing a home together and how that played out.
So it was weird. Okay, so what ended up happening with them is they announced, "Hey, we're filing for divorce." Well, Michael Darby is the rich one.
Mm-hmm.
She's newly rich because she's on the show, so she got a few dollars, but not anything like his money. And during the, I guess, divorce proceedings, she really realized she didn't have a leg to stand on. Her his I guess prenup was pretty ironclad. And so she decided, well, I want to buy a house. You know, I want to have somewhere for our two children. And even though they were divorcing, he ended up buying a house with her for her because I guess she wouldn't qualify for the mortgage on her own. So I thought that was very, very interesting. So let's talk a little bit because I know you and I, we see some messy things. At least I see some pretty messy things as it pertains to people when they are coming in on the mortgage side and they're like, oh, I want to buy a house. And I'm telling them it's a 6% rate and 7% rate. And, oh, it's going to be, you know, $2,700. What? So then, you know, they're like, well, what if I add my boyfriend? Because more often than not, I'm talking to women. So guys, if you're watching, I'm talking to you too. But this is the perspective that we're talking about right now. The girl, you know, well, what if I add my boyfriend, right? And I mean, it gets really messy. And I used to work for a bank, and when I would hear a woman, don't tell nobody. This is just between me and you. The girl would, you know, oh well, I want to refinance, but I want to add someone. So I'd be like, well, let's see if you can do it by yourself.
Right.
If you qualify by yourself, it's okay. It's all right. Because I knew on the other side of that, during the refinance time, like I've been doing this for 9 years. So I guess maybe in 2014, 2015, 2016, when the Hart refinance was really popular, you didn't really have to produce any documentation or anything to get the lower rate. But I'm working at the bank and so-and-so Susie calls, hey, I want to refinance. I want to, you know, save some money. Great. I'm going through the thing. And I'm like, okay, Susie, now mind you, we service a loan. So I'm like, well, who's Michael?
Right.
Who is Michael? Michael? Who is? Oh, my ex? Yes. Who is he? I done hyped her up. She thinks she get ready to save $300 a month. And now she like, I don't know who Michael is. I don't know where he is. I hadn't talked to Michael in 6 or 7 years. I don't know where he is. Well, baby, you better go find him.
Right.
So it can get pretty interesting in there. So, hey, Mr. CKB, thanks for popping by. Buying a house with a boyfriend, girlfriend, yikes.
Clients that would come to me and they're like, oh, I want a divorce from my husband. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. We need to know if we're going to be able to serve him properly. And then it's like, oh, well, I haven't spoken to him in 5-6 years. And I'm like, what?
With a spouse?
Yes. They just have been, you know, separated and just gone about living their lives. I'm like, what?
Oh, well, so I know old people do that. Do young people do that?
Who?
Do younger people do that? I know older people would do that. Like
more so older people.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, because I've had family members, like they got into a certain age and they're like, well, you know, any day could be my day. I need to put some papers on this situation. So, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if that was a trend with, you know, people closer to our age or not. But so, but yeah, I mean, it can get pretty messy. So let's talk a little bit about married couples first, and then we can talk a little bit about how to handle yourself when you are unmarried. So when you are married, or engaged, let's do engaged. Does the law look at you any differently when you are boyfriend, girlfriend, engaged, or married when you are going into this type of transaction? As far as what you see, because I mean, I know mine.
Yes, and I believe you have definitely more protections as a married couple. But even still, if I know someone is about to get married, and I know that person may have their own business or may have their own, you know, separate property that they may have inherited from a loved one, may have been a gift from a family member or may just have been property that they obtained on their own. I make sure that they protect themselves prior to getting married. And that can be with a prenup, of course. And you want to do that because although, you know, in North or South Carolina, that is technically considered separate property, there is a point where that separate property can actually become marital property. So you want to make those precautions prior to that. One, knowing what you're getting into, you know, everyone says love is blind, right? But truly knowing what you're getting into, truly protecting yourself, your family, especially if you have kids that may not be with that partner, and just your family in general, because this may be, you know, property that you've inherited, property that's been passed down from your own family. You want to protect that and kind of keep that in the family. So I go over all that with them prior to, especially if it's a couple that comes to me and say, hey, you know, we want to close on this house. Then it's like, okay, well, how do you want this translated onto the deed? Why are both parties not on the promissory note to the lien holder? So it's a lot that goes into it, definitely.
So would you recommend, now that we're talking about $500,000 houses and $300,000 in equity in such a short period of time, would that be cause to get some sort of paperwork? I don't know if a prenup is too strong of a word to use. I've never been married, so I don't know. But I mean,
so
I used to think prenups were for rich people. Huh?
I said everyone seems so scared of the word. I don't know why.
I don't know. I always thought prenups were for rich people. I did. That's why I was like, I don't know if it's too strong of a word to use.
No, I mean it's an agreement between you and an individual you're not married to, right? And even with marriages, you know, they, you know, what's the percentage now? 61 and maybe more as far as the divorce rate. So if you're really going into that marriage, that relationship, knowing that that's the percentage, I mean, you can't turn a blind eye to that. So kind of like car insurance, right? Just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily, or you're saying, hey, I'm going to get into an accident, but you have it to protect yourself. You have it to protect your asset and your loved ones. No difference here.
Okay. Yeah, I know whenever you're married, it just feels like, to your point, like you said, you just have, I don't know if this is true. It feels like you have more protections. You kind of have to have some sort of mediator that says you can stay, you have to go.
Right.
That sort of thing. Right. So let's kind of look at it when you are two unmarried people. You're not engaged. This is your bae. It's my boo. Right. And you get in this, you know, situation. You're a situation ship sometimes, right, and you want to buy a house with this guy, right? And you know, you go through the loan application. We ask up front, are you married, unmarried, or separated? And baby, when I tell you, I did a loan one time where both parties indicated that they were married, but they had different last names. So I was like, hey, you know where this is going. And they were like, no, I'm married to somebody else. Oh. Like, did you give him any kind of paperwork? Like, what's going on here? So we see some things, right? So when you're going into this with just a boyfriend or just a girlfriend, what do you recommend on the legal side? Because a lot of people don't realize the brevity of entering into a 30-year contractual obligation to obtain property. Like, it's like, oh, I'm buying a house. Like, okay, y'all both don't own this, you know, right? So what do you suggest? What type of steps would you suggest either one of the parties or both parties come together and take that are outside of the lender to make sure that they're entering into this and we're not going to have any problems on the back end?
Right. So we mentioned prenup, which is kind of scary, right? But at the end of the day, it's pretty much just a contract or a mutual agreement between two parties, right? So I would definitely recommend not just these verbal communications, right? something that's actually in writing, drafted by an attorney that says, okay, this is the down payment, notating who is responsible for making that payment. Okay, these monthly payments is going to be split 50-50, right? Or, in the case of default, who gets the property, who has to try and, reimburse the lender. But like you said, definitely if only one person's name is on the loan, because that is truly catastrophic, because that lien holder only has that one person that can, be in default. And then you have another person that may or may not have been, making any payments on the lien. And they kind of get away scotch-free. So if both names are not on the lien, definitely have some type of contractual agreement that says, if this doesn't work out, who's leaving the home, who gets compensated for the home, is the home just going to be sold and then the profits split? Just kind of flesh out that with your attorney, like what are your options, and pretty much any agreement that you have, definitely make sure it's in writing.
What type of attorney would that be? Would that be the closing attorney that would handle that, or a different type of attorney?
It would just depend. So my firm, we definitely do contractual agreements, including prenups. But some real estate attorneys solely do real estate. So you would look for a contract attorney.
Okay. So you said it should cover who's making the payments,
mm-hmm.
or how the payments are going to be split 50-50. Now, what if the man pays the mortgage and the lady, she pays all the bills and everything, like the maintenance, and what if she's doing all of that? Does that matter, or are you only solely focused on the debt obligation of the mortgage?
So it truly depends on whatever agreement they come to. So they could say, okay, I'm, taking care of all the household needs. You may be taking care of the mortgage, right? But at the end of the day, if something were to happen, you'd be compensated for maybe half of the down payment, because maybe they assisted with that. Or you'd be compensated for, 5-6 months of rent wherever you go after this. So it just has to be detailed, written down, and signed by both parties. So like I tell a lot of my clients, anything that you're thinking, anything that you want, truly to occur, we can assist you with getting that down on paper and in the form of an agreement. So if you want, if you say, if this goes south, you get the car and I keep the house, if it's in writing, we can make that happen. So
now, would anything ever go in front of a judge? So let's say we don't do that, mm-hmm. and we go together, right? we in this
real bad.
And and 18 months later, mm-hmm. You got a moment like who Lil Meech had, where he got caught earlier today on the neighbor's Ring doorbell. Summer Walker is like, I hate cheaters. I can't believe he cheated on me, girl. Okay. Who couldn't have seen that coming? But that's another story for another day. Yeah, so like how does that work if we don't?
Yeah, so that will probably end up in litigation, unfortunately. And like my partner says all the time, whether or not that person has a leg to stand on, that does not bar them or dissuade them from trying to, file an action in court, from having you incur attorney fees, right? So let's just say, there's no agreement. The person that may not have been making any payments, they can say, hey, well, this was, a gift. I'm on the deed, because of a gift, versus, you have that standard contract say, okay, for consideration of me putting you on this deed, you have to make, X percentage of the payments monthly. But if that's not in writing, then that's definitely up to the court's interpretation. So litigation costs, the heartache, trying to find a new spot because you may not want to continue living there, right? Can all be things that you have to consider if you forego getting that in writing, that agreement in writing.
Now, I'm curious because we have some different types of states, right? So we have like the community property, and then we have spousal. right? Can you explain the difference between the two?
Yeah, sure. So community is more so everything's 50-50. I know everyone's seen, divorce actions or, especially with celebrities in the
Like
state
in
of
California?
exactly. But that is not us. So in North and South Carolina, we're actually a state that use the term equitable distribution. And that pretty much is the court saying, okay, we may or may not use 50-50, but we're going to do what we deem as equitable, what we deem as fair. And the court is actually going to use pretty much a few factors to determine what's actually fair, what's actually equitable. So that can be, who's the custodial parent. That could be one party's level of education over the other. If one party is a stay-at-home mother, if one party, what sacrifices did they make to allow the other party maybe to pursue that secondary level of education? So the court's going to use various factors to pretty much determine what is equitable. So it starts 50-50, but those factors could shift it one way or the other.
Oh, well, okay. Now I know on my side, I can't remember because I have to look at the map, but I know Texas is one of these states where if you are getting a government loan, y'all, please know, if you're getting like a government loan, like an FHA loan, sometimes we have to look at the debt of the person that you're married to, even though they're not going to be on the loan. So that's something that you have to consider, something that you need to think about. When you trying to figure out if y'all are evenly yoked, like y'all don't let them drag you down. But again, that's another story for another day. What about common law? Is that a thing, or is that just something that like the old people used to say? Is that a real thing, and does that impact the way that people enter or into the mortgage space, homeownership agreements?
Yeah, it's more so like an old term. I know, I can't remember how long ago South Carolina finally did away, with the common law concept and the common law marriage. Pretty much stated that if you live together, I can't remember, for a certain amount of time, that you were technically treated as a couple that was married. So that's, the old term. Oh, that's my common law husband. But yeah, that doesn't exist anymore in South Carolina anyway. I'm not sure the states that still remains in.
Okay, so if you stay in somebody's house for so long, it doesn't give you the right to their house.
No.
Okay, that's good to know.
Unless your name's on the deed.
Unless your name is on the deed, and you can put your name on or take it off at any point. You guys, that is completely separate from the financial instrument. I do the finance part. That all of that, if you I can't even think of it. Yeah, I don't get into all of that. If you tenants in common or body entirety, that has nothing to do with me. That's something that you work out with the title company. But that's all about your ownership interest or whatever in the property.
Yeah, and we try to, just in my opinion, and when I speak to individuals, just don't willy-nilly add anyone to the deed, whether it's, a spouse that we're talking about now, significant other, and definitely not your kids, because a lot of people think, oh, this is like, the workaround to estate plan, and I'll just add their name to the deed. But they don't think about the repercussions that could have. Like, let's say that individual has a lawsuit and, they're trying to come or use the home as their asset. Now that they're on the deed, they do technically have 50% ownership. So that's definitely something you should definitely stay away from.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot lately on the internet, where people be like, oh, I just bought my 13-year-old a house. Like, okay. Like, my child, he don't even clean up his room good. So we not doing that.
Right.
So you wouldn't recommend something like that? Is that what you're saying? That's not a good idea to purchase property or put it in the name of a child?
No, I'm talking about older individuals that maybe, 60 plus, and they're like, well, I know it's time for me to start thinking about my estate plan, what's going to happen to my property after I die. So I'll just, add my daughter to the home. which I would not do. I would go ahead and do the normal estate planning procedures, especially a trust. Because even if you deed that property to them and you may need governmental assistance, Medicaid, Medicare, the government actually can look back 5 years and say, oh, well, you technically owned this property less than 5 years ago. So we're going to count that as an asset. So they try to, like, you know, get it out of their name, deed it to the name of a loved one, a child, to kind of, you know, say, oh, well, I don't have any assets. Well, the government's going to say, yeah, you do, or you did within the last 5 years. So we try to make them pretty much aware of the benefits of actually putting that asset in a trust, to shield them from that. So that's where I normally see it.
Okay, that's good to know as well, because I've been advised that I should get a trust. But I guess because I have a child, but I'm very unfamiliar, so I guess you and I will have to have a conversation.
Yes. And like I
about
said, an estate plan is not, you know, a one size fits all, right? So we like to look at the individual, look at their lifestyle, look at their personal assets, their family structure, family dynamic, and kind of curtail what we believe will, you know, be a best fit for that individual. And sometimes that may not be a trust, sometimes it could. So
I had a lady within the last year. She had an 800 credit score.
What was the credit score?
She had like an 800 credit score.
Okay.
Great credit. And she was with a big box bank. And they, you know, got through everything. She was almost at the finish line. And I guess the title report or whatever came back, and they said, well, you owned a house, and it was sold in a tax sale. Well, come to find out, her dad put her on the deed. She had no idea. But fortunately for her, she was able to get a mortgage with a different lender, because there was no mortgage on the property. But that when you mentioned that, that made me think of her, because she had no idea that he had done that. He said that after her mom died, that he just was like, yeah, girl, you know, I'm gonna add you. And he had no idea. And it was gonna impact her, you know, because she was looking to purchase a home. So that's important. So, okay. So we talked about getting in. Now, so let's talk about, like, completely we breaking up. If you don't have the documentation, because ain't nobody gonna have no documentation. Let's be honest. Nobody's gonna do that. Well, by the way, let me ask, how much does something like that cost? So if it's boyfriend, girlfriend, how is it expensive to have an attorney draw up documentation?
To me, no. And I'll give you the price in a minute. But I like to
it must be high.
It is not.
Not you gotta build a value before you tell me.
I would say it's about 2 to 3 hours of work. Depending on how much back and forth between the two parties. So anywhere from $5 to $750. Compare that to actually being dragged into court and looking for a place to lay your head. That's going to be, some attorneys' retainers for that alone is going to be what, $3,000 or more. So yeah, so it's definitely more reasonable to pay $500-$750 up front. And hey, you can split that with your partner that you're so deeply in love with.
Yeah, it's love till it ain't. Like I said, love don't live here no more. He don't either. Okay, so Mr. CKB is he's actually a law student.
Oh.
Mr. CKB is he's in New York. He says, what happens when a boyfriend, girlfriend enters into a mortgage, but either one or both are married to someone else? Are the oblivious spouses responsible for the mortgage should they default?
So I will say in North Carolina, we are a homestead state. So that spouse is technically going to have, you know, some type of marital right to the property. And in many cases, depends on your lender, but from what I've seen, there are certain documents that the spouse would have to sign saying that, you know, they are aware that their spouse is taking out this loan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just can't be going flipping in and out of loans and your spouse don't know about it. Now I've had again when I worked at the bank, so the difference between where I work now and the bank, you can do all 50 states most of the time when you're at a bank, right? And so I can't remember what the state was because I do transactions from everywhere. But hang on, are you kidding me? I have a child. You see this? Sorry. Um, yeah, so I was working for a bank, so I was able to do loans in all 50 states. But I remember having a situation where um I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought because I'm so sorry. We're gonna move on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, I know what it was. The spouse, yeah, he was buying a house and because we see all the documents, we know what's going on. And he was like, yeah, don't tell my wife. He was buying something for some woman.
Oh, Lord.
We see some things. I'm telling you. It's bad. We see some things for sure. But I'm sorry about that. My baby, you would think he's like 2 or 3 years old sometimes, the way he like pay attention to me. But yeah, so okay, so on the other side of everything, so we don't have any documents or anything like that. We get into a fight. He's cheating. He grabbed his stuff. Actually, that's probably not gonna happen, right? Because rent is expensive. So we both in here.
We both downstairs.
We both in here, okay? What would you suggest a conversation look like? Granted, they don't have any documents. What advice would you say? These are the questions, these are the steps. Do you agree mutually between each other? Like, what do you do? How do you get out of that? Because when it comes to us, I talk about what we do on my side when people are breaking up, but what would you suggest that looks like between the two parties without an attorney, since they haven't gotten documentation?
Right. So first I would say, because you know how time passes, people forget things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say, keep a clear accounting. Like, just keep documentation. You know, they may honestly forget who put down the down payment 10 years ago, right? Or if they contributed in any amount. So if you have some sort of documentation, just showing, okay, yeah, so I did put down the full down payment, but we did share, you know, potentially on the mortgage payments monthly. I would definitely attempt to try and come to an agreement with that individual. And even if you have to get an attorney involved during that stage, it could potentially assist you in mediation or come to some mutual agreement before you actually, you know, get to the point where nobody agrees on anything and you actually have to go to court. So one, like I said, I mean, you're not saying this may happen, but you know, like I said, people forget. So keep a clear accounting of what was paid, the amounts paid per month, who was responsible for that, who's been doing or paying for the utilities. And then that can give you some type of leverage when you do enter that quote unquote negotiation with the other party. So even if it's, hey, give me, you know, half of the down payment, you know, at this point, maybe that person has, you know, become more financially stable, and now can afford that, versus prior when they may not have been in that position. So definitely we try to reach a compromise. We promote compromise. You know, I've been in courtrooms where the judge has given a beautiful soliloquy after we have told them, yes, these parties have been able to come to a mutual agreement. And they're definitely grateful for, you know, us saving the court's time. And you'll be grateful for saving a little bit of money on the back end. Yeah.
I can completely see how that would be appreciated because they're probably like, get out of here. I remember when I was young, I would watch Judge Judy, and I always remember she was pretty clear on like certain things, right? Like you might not know the law, but it's kind of like there's some common things that you just kind of universally know. So I know one of the things was like when you get engaged, that the ring is not for you to keep if y'all don't get married. You're supposed to give it back, right? Because it's given under the premise that
Right.
you're going to get married, right? So is there anything like that when it comes to living with somebody that is just kind of a universal known thing?
Well, it could, like I said earlier, it could be universally known technically. Let's say, in the deed document, you may just say this is given as a gift or consideration for what, $10 to add that person's name. But of course, some people do that to get around, taxes, transfer taxes. So it may technically be commonly deemed as a gift, but like I said earlier, that's not going to stop the other person from going into the courtroom, finding an attorney that could potentially argue that, no, this was not a gift because I did X, Y, and Z as consideration. So, yeah, what's commonly known needs to be written with a pen on paper. No matter how commonly known you think it is.
Everything needs to be on paper. Everything needs to be written down. So let's talk a little bit, because in the last few years, we've had a tremendous amount of equity that home buyers have been able to accrue in, like I said, a very short period of time. What does an equity buyout look like, and who determines what?
Yeah, so it depends. Like I said, the judge will try and do what he deems as equitable or fair. So, of course, for the most part, don't hate me out there, fellas, but if there is, children involved, they want that child to be, in a stable environment. So that may be the wife remaining in the home, right?
So you don't have an equity buyout unless you only have an equity buyout if you are married, or does it matter?
No, I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
But that's where it commonly comes up as to what's fair or more reasonable. But as far as, let's say it's an unmarried couple, they potentially have the option of going that route. And then if for whatever reason, I had an example a couple of weeks ago, someone that was not credit worthy, so to speak, so they couldn't even benefit from that. And in those cases, the judge may say, well, hey, I'm giving you X amount of days to get this refinance or equity buyout. And then once this date expires, I'm going to have to sell the property and split the proceeds at that point. So.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. So that's kind of where I come into play. When you are with somebody, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the situation is, anybody, you just can't pick up the phone and call the bank and say, so-and-so don't live here, take their name off. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that. Mm-hmm. It is far more complex. Right. Whoever is going to remain in that home, if you're refinancing that person off the loan, so then they don't have any type of financial obligation, it's not on their credit. They removed their name from the deed, so there is no ownership interest anymore. Whomever is going to stay in that house, you have to be able to prove to the lender that you can make the payment by yourself. Mm-hmm. It has to happen. You have to effectively reapply to stay in your own home. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. I had a lady, one of the very first loans that I was involved in was a refinance. Well, I called the lady to see if she wanted to refinance. And I was so geeked. I was like, oh, she don't save so much money. It's amazing. The lady told me during the conversation that she had been married. Mm-hmm. They were now divorced. And she says to me, well, if I refinance, will he have his name off? I was like, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He won't be on it anymore. She said, nope, I'm not doing it. What you mean you're not? What? But you gonna save so much money, ma'am. Why don't you want to Because that means he can buy a house with her. I want him to suffer. Girl, what is wrong with you?
Oh.
So you have to be careful who you're going
Yeah.
into these unions with. People are crazy.
Mhm.
Another thing that I see is um I guess I don't know if it's more common. Yeah, really, it's more common with divorced people. But when people break up, their credit goes to hell. Um, Now, if a judge has said that this is not no longer your debt obligation, and the person hasn't refinanced, and you're coming to us, and we're looking at your mortgage. I'm sorry, excuse me. We're looking at your credit report, and you have the documents. You got papers on somebody. Then we're gonna address you a little more uniquely than other people's situations. So again, that's another reason why you gotta have paperwork on people. You just can't be out here. Oh, I like this house. I want to get a house built so we can stand in front of this D.R. Horton home with this big old key. You got no, 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 no. It terrible idea. Horrible idea, y'all. And I mean, I'm openly saying it's a terrible idea. But I mean, of course, you do what you want to do. But I'm telling you, I've seen things go very, very poorly. But
Yeah.
the refinance part of it is the biggest thing. If you going into a property with your boo or your bae, because you know you can't buy this house on your own. So they kind of just conveniently are here. And you like, well, we should buy, let's get a house together. We already live together. I can afford it if I put you up. You cannot just leave. You can't do that. The boyfriend can be gone. Let's say she can pay for it by herself. If he leaves, he's still obligated to this property. So, y'all, it's a very big deal. I don't know if you heard me say it, but this is a very big deal. So important. I'm just saying, do what you want to do, but get some papers on
Yeah,
people.
and to piggyback off of what you said earlier, it was actually a couple and they were separated and they were going through the whole process of trying to get a divorce. I think it was the husband. He was like so ill-willed, um, and he would not make the mortgage payments. And the home actually went into foreclosure during this whole process. So yeah,
Yeah, people will bring you
they
down. Y'all
will.
have got to be careful. I mean, think if that was a boyfriend, girlfriend deal with you. I mean, they don't care.
Right. No
If
kind
they
of
don't
protection.
care, that's you gotta be careful. Like, so would you consider that to be kind of a worst case scenario? What are some of the potential fallouts like that's more catastrophic other than like, oh, we argued, what could happen? So somebody could trash your credit.
Correct. Um, I guess they could potentially, since they have an interest in the property, they could try, to sell their interest, and then you're left with some random individual. And then I saw one instance. It actually happened to be heirs property. So this was a property that was owned by like 10 relatives. The grandma was nice. She was, because they had, I don't know, at least 10 acres of land. So the grandma, she was nice. She was like, yeah, they were married though. She was like, you and your husband, y'all can build a, home on the property. They built a home on this property. Of course, shortly thereafter, maybe, 5, 6 years later, they end up getting a divorce. In the divorce decree, the judge pretty much says, this home is marital property. Um, there needs to be some type of refinance or buy out the other spouse. But the judge, I don't know who the attorneys were, but the judge left it like open, right? It didn't have any like parameters. It didn't say if this can't be done, then this is the fallback. So, of course, since the home was technically owned by the couple, but the property surrounding it was not, now you have an instance where the family is trying to sell this land, but they have to say, well, I guess we now have to take into consideration her marital interest in this property now. And how much is that going to cost us? What if she doesn't agree to, whatever buyout amount we give them? So they were asking me for advice, and I'm like, this can go one or two ways. Of course, it can be drawn out and potentially go to court, potentially have to partition the land versus their initial wants and desires, which is just to sell it to a developer. So things can definitely go haywire and can affect your family, affect the profits that you could make, from that property and transaction.
Oh yeah, it could definitely get spicy, y'all. I'm just get papers on people. That's the takeaway of the day. You need paperwork. If you gonna get this house with
Right.
your bae or your boo, and it ain't no ring. I mean, and even then when y'all still think y'all engaged, you engaged till you not. Just like you married till you not. Right? So guys, make sure that you are consulting somebody, um, an attorney, and that you are taking the appropriate measures. Even if I guess it would be acceptable if you wrote it out and what got something notarized, some sort of an agreement between two people. Would that work?
Yeah, definitely would help, assist you. Like I say, I'm all about, getting that home, right? But I'm also about protecting. So whether that's through estate planning, whether that's through a prenup, whether that's, an outside agreement, just stating, what were to happen if things went south. It's all about protecting yourself and, protecting the other individual too. So they can look at it that standpoint as well.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you. So just to summarize, top five things that you need to have in this agreement going in, and then the I guess top five that you need going out. Whatever the agreement is. I know you said determine like the down payment or who's paying what.
Right. So, any initial contributions, whether it's a down payment, whether it's, reimbursement for any, I guess, upkeep, maintenance, or landscaping that's done on the front end, whether it may be a renovation or something of that nature, any like substantial lump sum that's going into it. So, you need to make sure that the contract details a payback option if things go south. You need to make sure there's different parameters around who's responsible for the monthly payment. If they're not responsible for the monthly payment, have something in there about utilities, anything of that nature that could contribute to the upkeep of the home. Anything about what were to happen on the outset or the onset of this potentially going south. So who would keep the property? Whose name is listed on, the note? What parameters would have to take place prior to potentially adding that party to the deed if that were to happen? Is this considered a gift? Is it not considered a gift? That needs to be clearly stated. If it's not considered a gift, what monetary value are you giving to being added to the deed, right? So that's definitely going to help, especially when you have a third party as a court coming in. And if they can only see that deed, they're not going to know, right? So if you have that clearly laid out as a contract saying, okay, yes, we did enter into this agreement. These are the parameters. This is what happens if things were to go south. It's detailed, it's laid out. You sought an attorney to give you some clear instructions. You may have to negotiate with the other party, but you always have to compromise, right? So those are my quick tips.
That's perfect. I love it. Well, I appreciate you for stopping by. Josh was checking in from Florida. Hey, Josh,
Hey.
checking in from Florida. Thank you so much for popping by. But this is invaluable information that will live on the internet forever. So people will, have good information and not their homegirls information to say
Right.
what they think they should do. Like I said, I've seen a lot of things on these Facebook groups and people just genuinely don't know what to do. So I appreciate you being able to concisely describe what that is for us. Mr. CKB says, in other words, put your big boy drawers or big girl panties on and
Yes.
enter into this agreement with sense and not feelings. That's right.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yes, because feelings are not facts. We do understand that. But yeah, girl. So anyway, y'all, if you again haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Like this video, share it with your friends, your family, send it to somebody when they thinking about buying a house with their boo or their bae. And I appreciate y'all. So until next time, I'll see y'all next Tuesday for another episode on Mortgage Boss Talk Tuesday. Y'all have a wonderful week.